What does rejection feel like? For some of you, it may sting like a slap to the face, unexpected and harsh. For others, it might settle in like a heavy weight on your chest, a quiet disappointment that lingers for days, maybe even weeks. If you've ever felt that crushing moment when someone says you're not enough, whether it's in a relationship, a job interview, or even a friendship, you know that rejection can feel like a loss of something deeper than just an opportunity. It feels personal, doesn't it? It feels like a door slamming shut, leaving you outside, wondering what you did wrong. But let's pause for a second. Let's really sit with that feeling. When you think about rejection, what's really happening? Why does it hit us so hard? Is it because we believe, on some level, that when someone else turns us down, they're telling the truth about who we are? That their judgment, their opinion, their decision holds more weight than our own understanding of ourselves? Isn't it strange how quickly we can let someone else's no define our entire sense of worth? We've all been there, haven't we? Maybe you worked hard for a promotion that never came, or you opened up to someone you cared about, only to find out they didn't feel the same way. Maybe it was a childhood friend who drifted away without explanation, or a project you poured your heart into, only to have it fall apart. Each time, it feels like something has been taken from you, a piece of your confidence, your self-belief, maybe even your hope for the future. Rejection isn't about you. I know that might sound odd, especially when it feels like you've been rejected personally. But rejection, at its core, is a reflection of circumstance, not your value. It's a result of someone else's perspective, their needs, their timing, or even their blind spots. It has more to do with them than it does with you. Yet we often make it about us, don't we? We carry that rejection around like it's a truth we need to own, and it seeps into our thoughts. Maybe I wasn't smart enough for that job, we tell ourselves. Maybe I'm not lovable enough for that relationship. Maybe I wasn't talented enough for that opportunity. But I'm here to tell you that rejection is not a verdict. It's a moment. It's a part of life, but it's not the defining part. It's not the end of the story, not by a long shot. How many times have you been rejected, only to look back later and realize that what felt like the worst thing at the time turned out to be the best thing for you? Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Maybe you didn't get that job because a better one was around the corner. Maybe that relationship fell apart because you were meant for someone who could love and appreciate you for who you really are. It's hard to see it in the moment, but rejection has a way of clearing the path to something greater, something you may not even know you're ready for. Now, you might be wondering, is it really that serious? Can rejection really affect us that much? The answer is yes, and science backs it up. Did you know that the same areas of your brain that process physical pain also light up when you experience emotional rejection? Think about that for a moment. It means that when someone turns us down or says we're not good enough, our brains react in much the same way as if we'd broken a bone or burned our hand. The pain of rejection isn't just in your head. It's real. And your body feels it. Let me share something with you. I once met a man who had spent his entire life building a career he was proud of. He had worked hard, sacrificed time with his family, and poured everything he had into his... And then one day, the company he worked for told him his role was no longer needed. Just like that. He told me later, I faced physical challenges in my life. I've had injuries, surgeries, but nothing compared to the pain I felt when they told me I wasn't needed anymore. That's how powerful rejection can be. It can feel worse than physical pain because it touches something deeper. It touches our sense of identity. Rejection taps into one of our greatest fears, the fear of being alone. When someone says no to us, it's easy to feel like we've been pushed aside, like we're not worth the time or effort. And from there, it's a slippery slope to thinking maybe no one will ever say yes. Rejection makes us question whether we're lovable, whether we're good enough, and whether we'll ever truly belong. It's a fear we all carry, even if we don't always realize it. And that fear of not being enough, of being inadequate, preached on rejection. Every time we face it, that voice inside us gets a little louder, whispering, see, you're not good enough, you'll never measure up. It's the kind of pain that can paralyze you if you let it. But here's what I want you to remember. That voice isn't telling the truth. Just because someone says no doesn't mean you're inadequate. It doesn't mean you're unworthy. It just means that in that moment, that situation wasn't right for you. The rejection is about the situation, not you as a person. Even the most successful people in the world have felt crushed by rejection at some point in their lives. Think about it. How many actors, entrepreneurs, artists, and innovators have been told no before finally hearing yes? Some of the most brilliant minds in history faced countless rejections. Take Thomas Edison, for example. He failed thousands of times before finally inventing the light bulb. He didn't let rejection define him because he understood something important. It was just a part of the process, not the end of it. I remember reading about a young writer who sent a manuscript to publisher after publisher, only to be turned down every time. She felt the sting of rejection deeply, doubting whether her words would ever find their way into the world. But she didn't stop. She kept going. Eventually, one publisher said yes, and that manuscript became a bestseller. Now, imagine if she had let that first no or even the 10th no convince her to give up. The world would miss out on her gift. That's the thing about rejection. It feels personal in the moment, but it's not a final judgment on who you are or what you're capable of. The pain of rejection, while intense, isn't the enemy. In fact, it's a signal. It's telling you something. And it's not saying, give up. It's saying, there's something to learn here. There's a new direction to explain, whether physical or emotional, is our body's way of getting our attention. It's there to show us that something needs to change, whether it's our approach, our mindset, or simply the way we're interpreting the situation. The pain you feel when someone says no is a reminder that you're alive, that you're growing, and that you're moving forward. So, the next time you feel the sting of rejection, remember this. It's not the end of the world, and it's not a reflection of your worth. It's simply a moment in time, a challenge that will eventually, just like physical pain, emotional pain heals. And when it does, you'll be stronger for having faced it. Instead of fearing rejection, lean into it. Ask yourself, what is this teaching me? How can I use this experience to grow? The truth is, no one gets through life without facing rejection. It's part of being human, but it's how we respond to it that makes all the difference. Will you let it define you, or will you let it refine you? Will you let it break you down, or will you use it as fuel to rise even higher? The pain of rejection is real, but it doesn't have to be permanent. It's a signal, not a sentence. And once you start seeing it that way, you'll find that the no's in life are just stepping stones toward the bigger yes. That's waiting for you down the road. So, the next time someone says no, take a deep breath, feel the pain, and then let it propel you forward. You are stronger than you think, and no rejection can take that away from you. What if rejection was trying to tell us something important? Think about that for a moment. What if instead of viewing rejection as this painful, final verdict, we started seeing it as a message? What if rejection wasn't trying to tear us down, but was instead pointing us in a direction we hadn't yet considered? Too often, when we hear no, we internalize it as a sign of failure. We take it personally, and it's easy to spiral into thoughts like, I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed. But I want to suggest a different perspective. What if rejection isn't a loss? What if it's a redirect? Imagine you're holding a compass. You think you know the path you're supposed to take, but as you walk, you keep hitting roadblocks. The compass starts pointing elsewhere, but you ignore it because you're so focused on the direction you initially wanted. Then, at some point, you have no choice but to stop. You're forced to reconsider. And that's where rejection comes in. It's that moment when life's compass nudges you toward a path you hadn't planned on, but one that might be far better suited for you. You see, rejection isn't always a reflection of your abilities or worth. It's feedback. It's life's way of saying, this isn't your path. Try something else. And when you start to view it that way, rejection shifts from being an enemy to being a guide. It stops being something that blocks you and becomes something that points you toward growth. Take Thomas Edison, for example. Edison faced failure after failure in his attempts to invent the light bulb. Each rejection, each time a prototype didn't work, could have been a reason to give up. But instead of seeing those failures as defeats, Edison reframed them. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." To him, each no wasn't a loss. It was feedback. It was a lesson. Each rejection was steering him closer to the ultimate yes. And because he kept going, he didn't just succeed, he transformed the world. The same is true for so many people we admire. Look at Abraham Lincoln. His early political career was marked by defeat after defeat. He lost elections, he faced setbacks, and yet he didn't let those rejections define him. Instead, he used them as moments to reflect, to refine his approach, and to persevere. Eventually, he became one of the most revered leaders in history. His story is a powerful reminder that rejection is often a temporary roadblock. So why do we so often see rejection as failure? It's because we tend to be focused on the outcome rather than the process. We get so attached to a specific result, a relationship, a job, a goal, that when it doesn't work out, we feel like we failed. But what if we shifted our perspective? What if we started viewing rejection as part of the process, as a necessary step towards something better? What if instead of saying, you see, rejection has a way of teaching us things we might not have learned otherwise. It highlights our blind spots. It forces us to pause and reassess. When we face rejection, we're given a choice. Do we let it teach us? Do we allow it to make us feel small, or do we use it to become stronger, wiser? Let me tell you a story. There was a young woman who applied for a dream job. She had all the qualifications, all the experience. She was sure this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. But when the call came, it wasn't the news she had hoped for. They chose someone else. She was devastated. She questioned everything, her skills, her value, her future. But after some time, she started to reflect. Maybe that job wasn't the right fit for her after all. Maybe there was something better. And there was. A few months later, another opportunity came along, one that was even more aligned with her strengths and passions. She got the job, and it turned out to be more fulfilling than she could have imagined. Looking back, she realized that the initial rejection wasn't a failure. It was a redirect. It was life's way of steering her towards something that was a better fit. And that's the power of reframing rejection. When you stop seeing it as an end, it opens up possibilities you might never have considered. Rejection can also be a teacher. It helps us see where we can improve, where we can grow. When we face rejection, it's an opportunity to ask, what can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to become better? It's a moment for reflection and growth. Instead of seeing it as a punishment, see it as a lesson. Every no carries with it valuable insights about ourselves, about our approach, about what we truly want. And when we're open to learning those lessons, rejection becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Now, I'm not saying that rejection doesn't hurt. It does. It's painful to be turned down, to be told no, to have our hopes dashed. But pain isn't the enemy. Pain is a signal. It's there to get our attention, to make us... When we face rejection, that pain is telling us something important. It's saying, pay attention. There's something here for you to learn. And if we can embrace that pain, if we can lean into it rather than run from it, we'll find that it's often the very thing that helps us grow the most. How many times in your life have you faced rejection, only to look back later and realize that it was a blessing in disguise? Maybe it was a job you didn't get that led you to an even better opportunity. Maybe it was a relationship that didn't work out that made space for someone who was a better fit. The point is, rejection isn't always the setback we think it is. Sometimes it's the universe's way of redirecting us towards something even greater. I want to challenge you to start seeing rejection in a new light. The next time you face a no, don't let it crush your spirit. Instead, ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? Where is this pointing me? Remember, rejection is not the end. It's a shift in direction. It's a moment to rethink, rebuild, and reapproach. When you start viewing rejection as a redirect, it loses its power over you. It stops being this looming threat and starts being a tool for growth. It becomes part of your journey towards success, not an obstacle blocking your way. The next time life hands you an eye, remember this: it's not a loss. It's a compass pointing you towards something better. Use it as an opportunity to reflect, to learn, and to grow. Trust that every rejection is guiding you toward the place you're truly meant to be. You might not see it right away, but with time and perspective, you'll come to realize that each no was leading you closer to your ultimate yes. Have you ever considered that rejection might be a mirror, revealing parts of ourselves we didn't know? It's easy to look at rejection as a setback, a roadblock that stops us from moving forward. But what if it's more than that? What if, in those moments of rejection, we're being given a chance to see something we hadn't noticed about ourselves? Something that could lead to growth, understanding, to a better version of who we are. When we face rejection, we're often forced to look inward. It's in those moments of disappointment that we start asking ourselves questions we might not have asked otherwise. What could I have done differently? Is this really the right path for me? What is this rejection trying to show me? And in that process, we begin to uncover strengths we didn't realize we had and weaknesses we've been avoiding. Rejection, in a way, shines a light on the parts of ourselves that need attention. It helps us see what we're capable of and where we need to grow. Think of the Siam sculptor working on a block of marble. Each rejection, each setback, is like the chisel hitting the stone. At first, it might seem like it's just breaking pieces away, making the block smaller. But what's really happening is that with each strike, the sculptor is shaping something beautiful. Each piece that falls away reveals more of the masterpiece underneath. And the same is true for us. Each rejection we face is a part of the process that reveals who we truly are. It chips away at the things we don't need, the doubts, the fears, the insecurities, and slowly we become more refined, more clear in our purpose, more aligned with our true selves. Rejection pushes us to examine our strengths and weaknesses. It forces us to ask, where am I strong? Where can I improve? And that's not always easy. It's uncomfortable to face our shortcomings, to admit that we're not perfect. But that discomfort is where growth happens. It's where we start to evolve. Instead of seeing rejection as a personal failure, we can choose to see it as an invitation to become better, to rise above the challenge and refine our approach. Let me tell you a story. There was a man who had always dreamed of becoming a successful entrepreneur. He had a vision, he had the passion, and he had a plan. But time after time, his ideas were rejected. Investors turned him down. Partners backed out. And it seemed like no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get his business off the ground. He could have given up. He could have taken those rejections as a sign that he wasn't cut out for entrepreneurship. But instead, he started to reflect. He asked himself, what are these rejections teaching me? And as he dug deeper, he realized that his approach needed work. He needed to strengthen his pitch, refine his ideas, and develop his leadership. The rejection wasn't telling him to quit. It was telling him to grow. Over time, he made those changes. He learned from each rejection, using it as feedback rather than failure. And eventually, he succeeded. His business took off, and he became more successful than he had ever imagined. But here's the thing, he wouldn't have reached that level of success without the rejections. Each one was like a sculptor's chisel, shaping him into the person he needed to become in order to achieve his goal. Rejection also offers us the chance to develop self-awareness. It helps us understand what we truly want. When something doesn't work out, it forces us to ask, was this really the right path? Sometimes we're so focused on a goal that we don't stop to question whether it's actually what we want. Rejection can be the nudge we need to reassess our priorities. It helps us align with our true desires rather than chasing something that might not be right for us. I remember talking to a woman who had spent years trying to build a career in a field she thought was her passion, but despite her hard work, she kept facing rejection. Job offers didn't come through, opportunities fell through the cracks, and she started to feel defeated. One day, after yet another rejection, she decided to take a step back. She asked herself, is this really what I want? Or have I been pursuing this because I thought I should? That moment of reflection was powerful. He realized that the rejections were showing her something important, that her true passion lay elsewhere. She shifted her focus, and soon after, she found a new path that felt right for her. And guess what? The door started opening. Sometimes rejection is life's way of saying, you're aiming in the wrong direction. There's something better for you over here. It's not about shutting us down. It's about guiding us to where we're meant to be. But in order to hear that message, we have to be willing to reflect. We have to be open to seeing what the rejection is trying to show us. So what if the next time you face rejection, instead of asking, why me? You ask, what is this revealing about me? What strengths can you build on? What weaknesses can you address? How can this setback shape you into a stronger, more capable version of yourself? When we approach rejection with that mindset, it stops being something to fear and starts being just like the sculptor chiseling away at the block of marble. Each rejection is part of the process of uncovering the masterpiece within. It's uncomfortable, yes. It's challenging. But in the end, it's what helps us grow. It's what refines us, shapes us, and brings us closer to our true self. And as we become more self-aware, as we learn from each setback, we move closer to the life we're meant to live. So the next time you face rejection, remember that it's not a wall. It's a mirror. It's reflecting back to you the areas where you can grow, the places where you can improve, and the strengths you might not have realized you. It's part of your evolution, part of the process of becoming the person you're meant to be. And when you see it that way, rejection loses its power to hurt and instead becomes one of the most valuable tools for your personal growth. What if rejection is leading you to your true purpose? I want you to really sit with that question for a moment. We often think of rejection as a stop sign, a signal that we're not good enough or that the thing we want isn't meant for us. But what if that's not the case at all? What if rejection is life's way of nudging us towards something deeper, something more aligned with who we're truly meant to be? You see, life is a way of unfolding in ways we don't always understand at the moment. We have our plans, our dreams, and when things don't go the way we expect, we feel crushed, defeated. But in those moments of rejection, something powerful has happened, something we may not fully realize until later. Sometimes the doors that close are just pointing us to the ones that are meant to open. Have you ever experienced a rejection that, looking back, turned out to be a blessing? Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a relationship that didn't work out, or an opportunity that slipped through your fingers. At the time, it felt like a loss, but later you found something even better, a job that was more fulfilling, a relationship that was healthier, or an opportunity that aligned more with your value. In hindsight, you can see that the rejection wasn't a dead end. It was a detour that led you to something greater, something more in tune with your purpose. And that's the thing about rejection. It refines us, reshapes us, and in many cases reveals to us what we are truly meant to do. It strips away the distractions, the things that aren't meant for us, and guides us toward the path that's right. We don't always see it in the moment, but rejection can be the very thing that points us toward our true calling. There's a story I want to share with you. It's about a man who, for years, struggled to make a name for himself in the world of writing. He sent manuscript after manuscript to publishers, and time after time, he was rejected. No one seemed interested in his work. He could have given up, and believe me, many people in his position would have, but he didn't. Instead, he took those rejections and used them to fuel his determination. He refined his writing. He owned his craft, and eventually, his work was published. That man was Stephen King, and the book that finally made it to print was Carrie. Today, he's one of the most successful authors in the world. But without those initial rejections, without that early struggle, would he have become the writer he is? What this story illustrates is that rejection is not the end. It's not a verdict on your worth or your abilities. In fact, it's often the beginning of something even greater. It's an opportunity for you to reassess, to dig deeper, and to discover what you're really capable of. Rejection can be the very thing that leads you to your true purpose. Now, I know that when you're in the midst of rejection, it's hard to see it this way. It's easy to get caught up in the disappointment, to feel like you're stuck or like you're being left behind. But I want to challenge you to shift your perspective. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is this rejection trying to show me? What new direction is it leading me toward? I once spoke to a woman who had spent years in a career that on paper seemed perfect. She had the education, the skills, the job title, but she wasn't happy. Still, she stuck with it because she believed it was what she was supposed to. Then one day, she was laid off. At first, she felt devastated. She had poured so much of her time and energy into her career, and now it felt like it had all been for nothing. But after some time passed, she realized that the layoff was giving her a chance to pursue something she had always been passionate about, but had never had the courage to explore. She started painting again, something she hadn't done since she was young, and soon her work was being featured in galleries. Today, she is a full-time artist, and she couldn't be happier. That layoff, that rejection, was the push she needed to follow her true calling. Without it, she might have stayed in a job that drained her, never realizing the potential that was within her all. This is what I mean when I say that rejection can lead us to our true purpose. Sometimes we're so focused on a particular outcome, on achieving a specific goal, that we don't stop to consider whether that goal is really aligned with who we are. Rejection forces us to pause. It forces us to reevaluate, to ask ourselves the hard questions. Is this truly what I want, or is there something deeper calling to me? When we start to see rejection as a redirection, as a signpost pointing us towards something greater, we stop fearing it. We stop seeing it as a failure and start embracing it as part of our growth, part of our journey toward finding meaning and purpose. Think about some of the most successful people in history. Many of them faced rejection after rejection before they found their true path. Take Oprah Winfrey, for example. Early in her career, she was fired from her job as a television reporter because she was deemed unfit for TV. Can you imagine how crushing that must have been? But that rejection didn't define her. Instead, it pushed her to pursue a career in talk shows where she found her true calling. Today, she's not just a successful television host, she's a global icon known for her ability to inspire and uplift others. That rejection was not a loss. It was a redirection toward her purpose. Rejection has a way of clearing the path for us, of showing us what's truly meant for us. It's like a gardener pruning a tree, cutting away the branches that no longer serve, so the tree can grow stronger and more vibrant. Each rejection you face is a pruning, a refining process that's helping you grow into the person you're meant. I want to leave you with this thought, because in rejection, you embraced it. What if you saw it as a necessary part of your journey toward discovering your true purpose? Life has a way of leading us where we are meant to go, even if it doesn't always look the way we expect. The doors that close are just as important as the ones that open, because sometimes it's in those closed doors that we find the path we were meant to take all along. So, the next time you face rejection, don't let it bring you down. Don't see it as a failure. Instead, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? Where is this leading me? And trust that in time, you will see that every rejection was part of a greater plan, guiding you toward the purpose that's been waiting for you all along. Because in the end, rejection is not the end. It's just the beginning of something far more meaningful. What if, instead of fearing rejection, we embraced it as part of our path? Think about that for a moment. What if we stopped seeing rejection as a threat to our dreams, our worth, or our potential, and started seeing it as a necessary? How different would our lives be if we stopped running from the discomfort of rejection and began to understand it as a stepping stone, a signal that something better is waiting for us? Throughout our time together, we've explored the pain, the sting, and the challenge of rejection. We've talked about how it can feel like a deep wound, how it touches on our most human fears of being unworthy or unwanted. And yet we've also discovered that rejection is not a final judgment. It is not a declaration of failure. Rejection is, in fact, part of the path towards success. It's not the end of your story, but a moment that adds texture and depth to your journey. Rejection isn't the opposite of success. It's intertwined with it. Every time we face rejection, we are given a choice to let it define us or to let it refine us, to give up or to rise stronger. This shift in mindset changes everything. Rejection, when embraced, becomes not a barrier, but a teacher. It forces us to look at where we are, what we truly want, and what we're willing to fight for. And sometimes, rejection is the universe's way of pushing us towards something far better than what we initially thought we wanted. I want to remind you of the countless stories we've touched on. Stories of people who faced rejection after rejection, but didn't let it stop them. People like Thomas Edison, who found thousands of ways not to make a light bulb before finally discovering the one that, or Oprah Winfrey, whose early rejection didn't stop her from becoming one of the most powerful voices in the world. These are not just success stories. They are examples of what happens when we view rejection not as a dead end, but as a redirection towards something great. The truth is, rejection is powerful, but its power comes not from the hurt it inflicts, but from how it can shape us, mold us, and propel us forward if we let it. When we embrace rejection, we embrace the full spectrum of life's experience. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to take risks, and to grow in ways we never imagined. Every rejection is a moment to rise, to learn, and to find a better path. It's a reminder that life isn't about avoiding the hard things, but about facing them, learning from them, and continuing to move forward with even more clarity and strength. So, as you go forward, I want to leave you with this. Rejection is not the end of your story. It's simply a step that leads you toward greater understanding, greater resilience, and ultimately, greater success. Embrace it, learn from it, and trust that every rejection is guiding you toward a path you might not have seen, but is exactly where you need to go. Because in the end, it's not the rejection that defines us, it's how we rise up